People who went to a wedding where the couple didn't last long. What happened? Witnessed by my parents, not me. During the wedding reception, someone asked the bride and groom when they were going to have kids. They had been dating for 8 years before getting married, so everyone assumed they were going to have kids immediately after getting married. The groom loudly said, "Oh man, I'm never having kids." The bride burst into tears and had to go to the restroom. They lasted about a year. You'd think that's something they would have talked about during that long time, but who knows. Went to a wedding that the bride's parents spent $30,000 for. 1 month later, the husband got a better job in a city 90 minutes away. The wife didn't want to move that far from her parents. They were divorced less than 2 months of marriage. This kind of thing is why some states give you a discount on your marriage license if you've done premarital counseling. Where are you willing to live in the future? Would you move for your job? Would you move for my job? Would you move to be closer to family? What's the farthest away you'd live from family? Will that change if we have kids? Will that change as our parents grow older? Are all important questions to ask before the wedding. My grandmother was married before she met my grandfather. This is back in the 50s. I've only heard the story once or twice, but she was 17. He was in his 20s. She was dirt poor in Kentucky, and he had a job. They got married, and within a few weeks he got pretty rough with her. When she told her parents, it came to light that he'd been abusive for a while. Her dad and brothers didn't know her new husband as well as they'd like, since he was going to be part of the family and all, so they invited him on a hunting trip. Anyway, there was some kind of accident, and the guy got shot. Since he'd been in the service and she was his widow, my grandmother got some veterans benefits for the rest of her life. Shortly thereafter, when she was 19-20, she met my grandfather and they were married just a few months shy of 50 years. One of the most compatible couples I've ever met. 1. The groom ducked a bridesmaid at the reception. Got caught behind the bar. Another. Bride ducked the best man in the limo on the way to the reception because the groom rode with his parents in the second limo. The limo driver told the groom, "Sounds like they were made for each other." NGL. These were 2 separate weddings, but the cheaters did end up dating for a few years as they were from the same circle of friends. Saw some signs at the wedding like ignoring each other, making rude and snide remarks publicly, etc. They tried to fix their marriage by having a kid earlier than they planned and that led to divorce. Both are married to different people now and have had more kids, by all accounts far more civil, even cordial with each other. Actually, I performed a wedding at a local bar. We left about 10 PM. The newlyweds got drunk, started fighting, and were arrested, spending the night in jail. A bonding experience. Honeymoon was amazing. I went to a wedding that was basically a gaslighting trap for the bride. The groom was a scumbag. His only skill was scamming unemployment for extensions based on fabricated reasons and grifting off the bride. They had a newborn and she had 2 other kids that he had calling him daddy at the time of the wedding, which was at his parents' house and performed by one of his buddies that got ordained just for this event. The bride was working 2 jobs to afford a home for the both of them. My wife was the only bridesmaid that was her friend. Basically, throughout the night, there were several concealed insults to the bride. He danced with other women before the first dance. He broke off their first dance awkwardly and quickly but danced with his mom for the full song. The bride ate alone with the baby while he ate sitting next to and flirting with other women at a different table. Then as the night went on, things just got out of hand. He and the entire bridal party, excepting my wife, continued to ignore her while dirty dancing with other women. His parents said some nasty shit to her, and when she finally got upset and confronted him, the groom's parents literally snatched the baby and kicked her off of the property. She was not able to see her own newborn until county sheriffs came 3 days later and basically said, "If you make us get a warrant, "We're going to arrest you for kidnapping and turn the house upside down." Unfortunately, he still bothers her to this day, as he is father of one of her kids. She has custody now, but he still starts problems. He's probably the only person on the planet that I can genuinely say, if I ever come across him somewhere not in a well-lit public area, I'd just immediately start kicking the shit out of him. Edit to add, it never was actually a legal marriage. They signed the papers but obviously nothing was ever filed and the minister was a part of the scam. My friend is a wedding photographer in Australia and she had a couple where the groom was visibly recoiling from the bride in every photo. She couldn't get a photo of him looking comfortable or happy around his bride. No idea what was going on, but they didn't last long. I had a couple that the groom hated smiling in photos. I had done their engagements so I knew what to expect, and we had become decent friends. It was kinda hilarious at first to see her doing everything possible to get him to smile. Until she started getting frustrated with him. I don't remember what I said, but I said something where he cracked a half smile. Then he just lost it and started laughing. I snapped a crap load of photos at that point. It's been almost 10 years, and they're still going strong. They were both 35, successful lawyer and doctor, but had never spent the night at each other's house. After the marriage they couldn't agree who would move in with who, and filed for divorce after 3 months. No one knows why they even got married at all. I guess they felt like they were supposed to at that age. My friend's mom got married to a trucker. Was a pretty nice guy, treated her well, took care of her financially. About a year in, his other 3 wives from other states group called her to inform her that he was also married to all of them as well. They all divorced him at the same time. Nothing was even finalized yet and he was sitting at a bar drinking. A fight broke out between other people and he got shoved off his bar stool. Hit his head pretty good, went home to sleep it off and never woke up. My brother got married to a woman from Russia while in the army. The whole family thought she married him for a green card, but he was convinced it was love. They had their ceremony in a gazebo on a military base. It was a small gathering of family that traveled to it from out of state. His best friend since high school got ordained just so he could marry them. My brother was really excited. He wore a nice suit and the bride, well, she showed up in a bright pink tracksuit. They divorced a year later. The wedding was beautiful and the most expensive wedding I have even been to. The bride worked for a fashion designer in Nick and had 3 different dresses she wore during different parts of the wedding. They announced she was pregnant soon after the wedding and unfortunately scans showed there were a few things wrong with the baby. The stress of the situation caused my cousin, the husband, to relapse and go back to his old heroin habit, which apparently she had no idea about. His drug use quickly spiraled and he got fired from his job for stealing, and then his wife found out about it all and moved out to stay with her parents. Baby was born 100% healthy, scans had got it wrong. He tried to quit Drew Gus and make amends to her, but it was rocky and she divorced him before their first anniversary. He dipped off for a few years doing Drew Gus, then got sober and found out he had brain cancer. Relapsed. Got sober again and had his brain tumor removed. Now he is still sober and remarried, has a few kids with his new wife. I didn't actually attend the wedding. During lockdown, when we were working from home, this one colleague was always reluctant to have work-related one-to-one calls with male colleagues such as myself. Eventually, I found out that her fiancé would moan and get jealous that she was talking to other men on Teams, even if it was 100% professional and work-related. Even then, I thought whoa, but figured it wasn't my place to say anything. They got married about 2 years ago. About 9 months ago, he asked for a divorce by text as he, Mr. Jealous, had found someone else. In contrast to some others here, this couple lasted long, a full 6 months. Until she confessed to cheating on him. Repeatedly. With several men. For several years. Sometimes with multiple men at the same time. Dude was a mess for a year after that. If my wife admitted to that kind of cheating, I don't think I'd ever get over it. I seem to have cancelled a wedding before it started. I was on a business visit in New York, eating alone in a restaurant, and next to me was a hen party with all the girls celebrating one girl going to get married. For some reason, the bride-to-be decided to sit at my table and talk about her big wedding. She also asked if she was right in marrying the guy. So, being nice, I asked where they met, what she likes about him, what he is doing for her to treat her right, where they are going to live, the usual. Unfortunately, the more she talked about him, the more depressed she looked. She could barely find any good words for him and at some point began to cry. Her friends came over accusing me of being rude, but I said that I only asked her what she liked about him. I did wish her well, but I am not sure how this ended. I was bartending a wedding and the groom kept getting drink after drink. He was so drunk that I started making his drinks with water and he didn't notice. Next thing you know, he is kissing a bridesmaid in the middle of the dance floor. His new father-in-law didn't take kindly to this and proceeded to knock him the duck out. They got it annulled. Went to Singapore to attend a female friend's wedding with a Singaporean guy. She'd been so happy up until the actual wedding. My friends and I arrived like 3 days before the ceremony, and the wedding girl was visibly troubled when she met us. We just thought it was nerves and all that. Wedding day comes and she comes out, in her full wedding gown, with an absolute bitch face. Like I'm about to murder someone kind of bitch face. I'm not even kidding, lol. Never smiled once during the whole ceremony and the dinner. She loosened up a bit in the after party, and my GF went and asked if she was okay. She waved my GF away. Right after the wedding, she went back to Hong Kong for work, claiming there's shit she needs to do. Then covered it and we're practically not allowed to travel anywhere for a year or two. We were worried about our marriage, but she was always rather evasive, not answering our questions or just shooting the shit whenever we talked about it. Our circle of friends learned not to ask about it anymore. Fast forward 5 years until now, it turns out that she never actually got married, lol. The ceremony and everything was a show. We gathered that the dude probably had another girlfriend in Singapore and she only found out right before the wedding. But then she never said it out loud, hinted it here or there with some close friends of hers. She's unreal. 6 or 7 of us, with a 4-year kid, flew to Singapore just to witness a show of a wedding, lol. My friend got married at one of the most expensive weddings I'd ever seen. It's a big 12th century 4-star hotel in the middle of the countryside. They had 2 ceremonies, a legal one with just a few of us there and then an amazing meal, and then in the evening a religious blessing at the bigger party in front of a couple of 100 people, then fireworks and a totally free bar all day. It was probably about £40 at least. The whole relationship had started strangely. My friend was pushing 50 and told his 23-year-old partner that he was 36. They lived in the garage of the partner's grandmother. Friend came clean about age. Partner said he always knew and that it was fine but not to tell his friends and family. They'd only been together about 3 months before they got married. At the wedding it was very obvious that my friend was older than the partner's parents. After the wedding they continued living in a garage. On their first anniversary they stayed in a hotel near us and we went to get dinner with them, and my friend's partner talked about all the clubbing and going out he did while my friend was much more the homemaker. About 1 month later, friend messaged me to tell me they split because he didn't like that 23-year-old went out partying and to festivals and put with his mates all the time. He wanted him to stay home and be in bed by 9. Thing is, my friends had previously been on a long-term relationship with someone younger and they split for the same reason. Side note, my husband and I had got married a month before their wedding, and all our friends that came to the wedding as couples are no longer together. All have split other than one where the husband died. Another one of the couple lasted 3 months after he found her sexting a colleague. They'd been together for about 10 years before getting married. She's now married to the new guy. Didn't go to the wedding, but did go to the bachelorette goodbye party. We were in college. She was 19. From a super conservative family. Her longtime boyfriend visited her once and was terrible, wouldn't talk to anyone, basically sulked the whole time. He clearly hated that she was in school. When he proposed, her parents pulled the plug on college tuition because she didn't need it anymore, so she dropped out at the end of her freshman year, moved back to Central California and got married to the sheethead. I never saw her again, but from what I've seen on Facebook she finally dumped him in her mid-20s, moved across the country to get away from her family, and was working restaurant jobs while trying to get a degree. We're in our 30s now, and she still seems pretty angry about everything she missed out on and how she was treated, but she's living her life on her own terms. Not a happy ending, but I'm happy for her. My good friend and college roommate got married to his high school sweetheart as he was working through grad school. It was a beautiful wedding, but a few of us noticed the lack of enthusiasm on the face of the bride. Fast forward to the honeymoon, and he had planned fun little couples excursions for each day of the trip. She wouldn't go on any of them, and insisted on staying in the room reading books. After the third day of her staying in, he went to the pool bar and chatted with the bartender and other guests for a few hours before returning to the room. She accused him of drunkenly knocking her over during an attempted hug, followed by her ranting through tears about how she should never have married him. She booked an early flight home, and the annulment was already underway by the time he returned 2 days later. Turns out, she had been voicing her concerns about getting married for months before the big day, and her father family and my buddy had persuaded her to go through with it. Her initial story upon returning was that he had thrown her down, but within a week, she had come clean that it was definitely an accident, which we all knew. BC, my friend, is one of the kindest and gentlest people I know. He's remarried to a lovely woman and has a young daughter, and his ex is traveling the world. Moral of the story is not to marry someone who clearly doesn't want to get married. My very sweet and adorable cousin has epilepsy. We really liked her boyfriend turned fiance and they seemed like a great match. We were all confused when she divorced him a year after their wedding. Turns out after they were officially married a switch flipped inside him and he became very emotionally abusive and manipulative. He would hold her epilepsy medication hostage in order for her to do whatever he asked. He was so psychologically abusive. As soon as she gathered enough courage to leave him, it's been amazing seeing her recovery to being her authentic, free self again after him. Wedding was fine. But then the groom tried to throw the bride off the balcony of the penthouse apartment they were staying in on the wedding night. I know this because I was a bridesmaid and she called me and another bridesmaid and asked us to stay the night with them in their hotel room. Super awkward, but she assured us it wasn't a sexual thing. Turns out she didn't feel safe being alone with him. Rightly so. They hid it well in public. He seemed like a decent guy until then, from what I had seen. Obviously that wasn't accurate. Why she married him I'll never know. I guess she was afraid of what he'd do if she said no. I live in a small town in Switzerland, so everybody knows everybody. A couple was to marry on Saturday. The guest came along and while they were greeted the bride excused herself. She left to suck of a former male friend of her one last time and got caught. We used to joke about her blowing of the wedding. This thing happened years ago, but the both are still living in our town separately and I can't unhear the story when I see them. My stepsister-in-law got married when she was a teenager and her husband was young as well and a moron. I'm not even sure it lasted a year. I remember one thing he did was brake check cars multiple times causing crashes and needing physical therapy. I can't imagine being that goddamn stupid. I remember he and his friends drinking illegally at the wedding like they were cool but they just looked like ducking clowns. I hated to see her marry an idiot like that because she is super smart and had goals and his goal was just to be a moron. I'm offering up this one because it actually, ultimately, has a happy ending. I got to know a guy in my hometown who had a wife from somewhere abroad. Every time I was around at his house she'd glare at him, refuse to speak to or acknowledge me, and just walk around like the physical incarnation of a thunderstorm. She was the exact same toward everyone else as well. When I asked my friend about this, he admitted she didn't really like where they lived, that being a town in the UK. And in fairness, it was not the nicest area of town by a very long shot, but he seemed oblivious to this. Their apartment was great, but the area around it looked like a set from The Walking Dead. That marriage lasted 6 months. When I asked him after why they got married, he told me he thought that since he was now, at that time, 30 years old, he should probably settle down. Which is the daftest reason to get married anyone's ever given me. Then this happened, told to me, by him, after the fact. From time to time he'd get emails from an old friend of his, a girl who had been a part of his circle of friends when he was younger, and who had since returned home to Asia. When she learned he'd married, her emails dried up for a few years. Just days after his divorce, she got back in touch for the first time in a long time and he wrote back with the news he was divorced. 3 days later she flew halfway around the world to see him. They became a couple after a couple of days, married 1 year later, and now have 3 kids. And live in a much nicer area. One of my best friends got married. None of us had met her before, but we hadn't seen him in years and were super excited to reconnect. This was the most elaborate wedding I had ever been to. Tuxes, an incredible meal, a hall that resembled Hogwarts, an opera performance and a string quartet playing his favorite rap songs. It was incredible, yet we just knew it wasn't him. We started to mingle with her friends at a table and we soon learned they didn't really know her. We brushed it off as we just wanted to be there for him and have a good time. That was until the mother of the bride made a harmless joke about the bride being difficult as a child. This led to the bride eventually storming off after the dances, locking herself in a room, getting blackout and berating him, his family and many guests who had flown across the country to be there. It all started to click that she was just absolutely psycho. Most of the guests caught the vibe and left by 9:30 p.m. Me and my friends eventually sat with her friends and shut down the party. From 150 guests down to 8. Why would we let everything go to waste? He quickly came over after he was able to calm her down and apologized to us and left. We honestly thought we'd never see him again. 6 weeks later he called me, he had returned home. They were done. The story just has so many layers to it. Looking back, in the 1 day we had been around the situation there were so many red flags. Thankfully we have him back and he's thriving. I was going to be best man at a friend's wedding. We got together the evening before the wedding, and all seemed well. Then, at 7:30 the next morning, I got a phone call from my friend. He said that the wedding was called off, and he would call and explain later. He didn't. It was 2 weeks later, I finally got a hold of his dad, and he said that his son was away at boot camp, and wouldn't be coming back. I never heard from him or the bride again, so I don't really know what happened. She had a baby she never bonded with. Shortly thereafter, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and hospitalized for months. When she was released, he went to court to get an order mandating that she only be allowed to see her child with another adult present. They mutually decided at that point to end the marriage. He now has full custody of the child and she has limited visitation rights. Sad story. This happened to my best friend from childhood. She met a man from her church. They married shortly after. I had always known her to be more on the depressive side, but after the birth of her daughter, she flipped into a long bout of mania, confirming it was more likely she lives with a form of bipolar disorder. She went from religious to hyper-religious to anti-religion within a year. Self-medicated with cannabis, which likely exacerbated a psychosis. They divorced. She has zero custody of her daughter, and cannot visit her without being accompanied by another adult. It was heartbreaking to see, but an unfortunately necessary step. She's since moved, found a new partner, and is going through several trials of treatments so she can work towards being healthier for her daughter. Wife got pregnant unexpectedly. Her rich family freaked out, called in all their connections to pull a $100K wedding and reception within a few weeks. Wife had a miscarriage after 6 months. A year later they were divorced and their marriage annulled. Neither the wife nor the husband really wanted to marry, but they caved due to pro-life family pressure. I think they would have made a go of it had they had the kid, but once that was out of the picture the marriage fell pretty quickly. Tale as old as time. One of my roommates in college got engaged to a guy in the army after dating for less than a year. My roommates and I were so confused when she came back from Christmas break engaged. During our senior year the fiancé was deployed and my roommate became best friends with the bouncer at our local bar, spending days and nights with him but denying there was anything going on. Girl, our bedrooms are right next to each other. Well, when her fiancé got back, one of his groomsmen had to drop out of the wedding, so she insisted her new best friend be a groomsman. I declined the wedding invite because it was obvious how screwed up the situation was and I didn't support it. Definitely made for awkward times as we still lived together up until the wedding. Myself and another roommate did try to tell her fiancé what was going on, but he totally blew us off. I think he was in denial and just made excuses for her. They lasted 10 months, I think. A friend of mine found out a few days after her wedding that her husband hadn't been away for work a few months before their marriage as he claimed, but was actually with his side chick that was giving birth to his child. Turns out the side chick had no idea either, so they had a long talk about him before confronting him. She got an annulment due to the marriage having been entered into under false circumstances. A friend of mine got married to the guy she was with in high school after being together like 7 years. The wedding was fantastic, and they easily dropped 10-20k on it. Best wedding I ever went to. A few months later, while me and my friend were on the way to work, she was talking to him on the car Bluetooth, so I just stayed quiet. I heard him at one point say I thought getting married would fix things, and I immediately felt awkward being there. They divorced not long after that. Groom met girl, fell hard in love, and pushed girl to quickly marry. He said love of his life. 3 months later after they married, he left her, victim blaming and gaslighting all around. He leaves out the part where he emotionally beat her into the ground with "I'm just kidding and you know what I mean" kinda shit. He didn't really leave her after 3 months of marriage. He went back and left for some other reason, and went back and left for yet another reason. This went on for months, and the wife never even knew problems existed. He destroyed that girl. I hope she finds someone who doesn't use love as a weapon against her. My best friend from college got married to a girl that we all liked a lot. Funny as hell, liked to have a good time, etc. She handled the finances in the marriage, and he opened a credit card statement one day to see an alarmingly high balance. Turns out, she was a huge cokehead. She had been putting all the bills on credit and all the paychecks up her nose. She got fired for doing coke at work, office job, and had a come to Jesus moment. She decided to go to rehab, where she met another guy. She never came home. Bonus fact, she was my ex-girlfriend. Edit, when she left him, she at least did the right thing and took all the debt with her. He walked away with the house and cars. This was my brother. I found out right before the wedding that it was for show because they'd already been married secretly for a year. Which means they'd gotten married after 3 months of dating. Wedding itself went fine except that she'd arranged for some guy from her church to come play acoustic guitar and sing as a surprise for him, and he didn't really appreciate it. He's not religious and doesn't listen to acoustic guitar music. Groom volunteered for an overseas deployment for the money for the both of them, and while gone found out she was cheating from the phone bill. Meanwhile she was running an army wife blog and planning of our renewal. Army sent him home early for mental health reasons, and when he got back she'd taken everything but his dog. My cousin was in a toxic relationship for a long time. They got engaged and he tried to leave her before the wedding. Her family, apparently drug-doing, troublemaking hillbillies, pressured him into staying. The wedding was called off about a week before, and was back on in less than 24 hours. He married her and they separated like the next day. They're getting a divorce now. She just had a baby. and we're not sure if it's his or not. This happened pretty recently, so it's causing some family drama. A bit different story than probably what most of these are, but 15 years ago or so, my boss was this cranky old Texan guy. He'd been married, supposedly, 7 times to women all over the globe. When I started working for him, he was cranky AF. I was honestly kind of scared of the guy. But after a few years he softened and he and I became extremely close, almost a son to him. He used to always tell me how women were evil, backstabbers, only after money I should stay away from them and never marry. Through work, he met this middle-aged property manager lady. I guess she was in a bad marriage, semi-separated or something, and they immediately hit it off. He became enamored with her and immediately just changed. Instead of this cranky old cowboy, he was so kind and carefree, it was crazy to watch his transformation over a couple of weeks. His GF expedited her divorce, since I guess they'd already started proceedings prior to meeting my boss. A few months later and I was a groomsman in a very small wedding at a $10 million oceanfront mansion they'd arranged through her company. I'd never seen him so happy. He made plans to retire from our company and start working with her. We were all thrilled for him. And then maybe a month after their wedding, we got a call they were having lunch when he stood up, said his back hurt, stretched and immediately died. His wife said she thought he was dead before he hit the ground. A few days later we found out he had an AAA. Awful. His wife was absolutely devastated, and to this day I still miss that mean old bastard. He was a Marine Corps officer, fighter jet pilot. She was smart, pretty and crazy. She admitted in the bathroom before the wedding that she cheated on him in college. No worries, let it go. They both had just graduated. His best man blew the speech in a way that Bukowski couldn't have predicted or explained. It was a rambling of swear words and secrets best left in the back halls of dorms and pubs. It was a destination wedding. There were no bridesmaids and 2 best men, old colleagues of the groom he wasn't really close to. They had 3 photographers, one that came as part of the wedding package, one the bride paid to have flown out with them, and one friend of the couple who took all the photos on his phone, but otherwise worked as though he had been hired for the job. No one had anything good to say about them as a couple. Her family weren't invited. His family spent all evening bitching about how awful the wedding prep had been since the bride cut so many people out of the wedding with just weeks to go, hence no bridesmaids, etc. The photographer who'd been hired to fly out sat with us at one point and offloaded about how stressful the whole day had been, calling the bride a bridezilla. I'm not sure quickly they separated after, but we never saw the wedding photos. I think it was a matter of weeks. We spent over £2,000 to be there. Apparently the bride wanted an open marriage and the groom didn't. It was me. I was the groom. Married in February, separated in May. The fella she was seeing on the side wifed her up for better or worse. Good on him, I guess. She was extremely abusive throughout the relationship, and from the inside I didn't really see it until a confidant talked to me about it after it ended. I now have a partner who isn't abusive and a wonderful child, so I don't feel like I lost much except for the mental and emotional toll of it all. Good mate of mine. Totally weird vibe at the wedding, so I knew something was up. He sat on the bridal table and smashed a bottle of scotch. She danced all night with her teenage daughter from a previous relationship. Turns out he'd picked up the iPad connected to her phone in the week before the wedding and saw all the messages from her karate instructor who she was having an affair with. His relatives were already en route from overseas, so they went through with the wedding but never signed the paperwork. It's me. I'm the couple. She started cheating on me like 3 months after the wedding. That I can prove, but I'm like pretty sure she was beforehand, at least emotionally. She cried at the altar, but not a sweet happy cry. It seemed like a really upset I'm about to make a big mistake cry. I remember thinking this doesn't seem right. Why is she crying like that? But she gave me no hints at second guessing the whole wedding at all, so I literally had no clue until we were getting married. So we went through with it. She started cheating 3 months later. I found out about it 3 months after that, and we got divorced. I went to 2 weddings and both marriages didn't last long. The first isn't any crazy, just 2 people who didn't speak on what they wanted in life, like kids, careers, etc before getting married. About 3 years. The second was a friend who married a girl that we knew in high school. She's a free-spirited kinky swinger type. I'm not sure what my old friend was thinking. To this day I don't understand the logic he had. Did he think her lifestyle would change once married? Guess so. He joined her lifestyle thinking it wouldn't last after marriage apparently. We cut him off after they divorced because he was bitching we weren't there for him and staying friends with his ex-wife. I don't know what he expected. She's been the same since high school and she never lied about who she is. She found someone who actually enjoyed that sort of life. He is still bitching about it. 1 year and 6 months. He was in his first year of residency and had an emotional affair within the first year of marriage. They did therapy, but he said he was already in love with another woman. He eventually said he needed to be with someone on his level intellectually. His ex-wife was a goddamn naval engineer and worked on complex propeller systems. He only dated the homewrecker for a few months once they separated, divorced. She came from a wealthy family. Their wedding cost $200,000 easily. It was insane. I was a groomsman. He's since bounced around in lots of relationships and is currently dating a woman in London. While working in make. I think he's ducked in the head. He can't stay in a relationship long. Falls in love easily then moves on. It's awful because his ex-wife was a smart, gorgeous, and very kind woman. He is a piece of shit. Big expensive wedding. Wife wanted a baby. Father wanted to wait a little longer but agreed the timing was pretty good for a baby. When the baby was there, the father did everything around the house and worked 60-70 hours per week on top of that. Wife cared for the baby but was annoyed by it 24/7 and wanted to work again. 2 months after birth. Father bent over backwards to allow her to start her job sooner than expected. Still wasn't happy and started a new job. Long story short, she started ducking her new boss and after a couple of months it came out. Divorce is through now and she's with the new boss and now runs his small business with him. They constantly have expensive vacations but struggle for money the whole year for everything. Ex-husband has spent the year reliving his 20s and having tons of fun and is genuinely a very good father. The fact that his ex-wife started ducking a bald, fat 50-year-old behind his back helped him lose all feelings for her. My wife and I used to have a business selling ice and one of our lines of trade was delivering to private parties. So I took an ice box out to a very rural location and filled it up with ice for a young couple's wedding party. I was even invited to it in the evening, so sat and drank whiskey with the families and collected the box back a couple of days later. A fortnight passed by and my wife told me to load up and deliver again to the same address. Only this time it was for a funeral because the groom had been murdered. Halloween themed wedding 2 days after Halloween and AMP. They danced their first dance to Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Found out a month later the groom was sleeping with the maid of honor and he's now married to her. Don't know if this qualifies. I had a fishing buddy friend who was an amazing artist, had a successful business he ran alone, was super attractive, big outdoorsman. Smart as hell, a math whiz, a little bit nerdy. He could not find a decent woman or have any serious relationship. It was inexplicable to me as he was one of the best looking men I have ever known. He had these amazing bright blue eyes and jet black hair. He bought this big, huge 4-bedroom massive home in the mountains in Colorado under the belief that he would have better luck finding a woman there. He lived for fishing and hunting and wanted someone who would at least go camping. He would tell me about all the strange women he dated. He met this woman, Janet, and fell madly in love. She pretended to be super outdoorsy. He drove her out so I could meet her and announced they were getting married. Everyone tried to convince him not to, or at least do a prenup. They had been together a month. He refused the prenup. His family tried to talk him out of the marriage at the wedding. It was not a happy event. 5 months later, she was cheating on him, told him she hated camping and hated him. It was a bitter fight. He told her to get out of his house. She said it was half hers and she was going to take him to the cleaners. He saw an attorney the next day who was able to annul the marriage because they had been married less than 6 months. Janet got nothing. If she had waited just a few more weeks, she would have gotten half of everything. Wedding was fine, but afterwards the groom got a job that required him to relocate. The bride would move over a bit later, and she, a daily emotional alcoholic, was already giving him shit for having a few female colleagues, and when she moves there she wants to meet them, like she was really paranoid even though the groom is a decent loyal guy. Getting closer to her moving to where he was based, I overheard her, already drunk again, talking unjustified smack about her husband to her friend over the phone, and was often quick to point out she'll divorce him for just about any scenario. Anyway, she moves in with him at their new place, and not long after they got divorced. She does some traveling for her work and turns out she was ducking her driver. Marriage didn't even last a few months. 1991. My friend who'd been living with and bought a house with her partner married him in a $10,000 wedding. That was quite a lot of money for a wedding then. 6 weeks later, he came home and they had a fight where he threw her to the ground, sat on her and punched the shit out of her. The following week, she went into a Bride of the Year competition covered in makeup to hide the bruises. When they got divorced soon after, they were still paying off the wedding. My ex-sister-in-law married a guy she hadn't known very long, and although that isn't any reliable indicator of how long a relationship will last, I found it very disturbing that the groom stood with his back turned toward his bride while she walked down the aisle. One of his groomsmen had to tap him on the arm and whisper in his ear that he was supposed to turn around when the wedding march started. She was maybe only 3 steps away from him when he finally turned around to see her. Less than a year later, he just came home from work one day and told her he had been with someone else since before they were married and she had to leave. My sister got pregnant at 17 and was basically forced to get married by our very religious family, led by our grandmother. Guy cheated on her 3 times with 3 different people in the first 6 months, and they annulled the marriage. Years later, I found out that the same very religious grandmother also had a kid in HS and married the guy. I don't know exactly what happened, but she married my grandfather on the day before what would have been her 1-year anniversary to the first guy. Also, did the math from my father's birth date, and he was either born a month premature or grandma was a month pregnant at her second wedding. RIP, you hypocritical whore. We went to a wedding and the bride found out the groom was cheating on the bride with her maid of honor. The maid of honor was, unknowingly, pregnant with the groom's baby at the time of the wedding. The bride found out on their honeymoon when she saw a text message from her best friend on her husband's phone informing him of his new parental status. The bride filed for divorce when they came back home and she moved back in with her parents. She felt betrayed and humiliated by her friend and husband. We dropped the husband as a friend as my husband and I have zero trust with cheaters. Turned out the groom, who I was working for at the time, was banging the gal who played the violin for the music at their wedding. Not sure how long the marriage lasted, but it was pretty damned quick, couple of months at most. And it was a huge and very expensive wedding. I still feel bad for the bride. She was super nice, and he was such an idiot. I hope she got the wedding annulled and found someone who deserved her. I stopped working for the guy around that time, so I never really heard what came of it, but I know it was over insanely fast.